It gives me great pleasure now to introduce our next presenter before lunch. Brigadier retired Kevin O'Brien, CSC, is a military historian and former senior army officer whose career has combined operational service, strategic leadership and a lifelong commitment to preserving and interpreting Australia's military history. A graduate of the Royal Military College Duntroon, he served in Vietnam, held command appointments including command of the 1st Division Artillery, and later led major doctrinal and historical initiatives at Army Training Command. His work in rewriting land warfare doctrine, supervising military history education, and producing documentaries on Kokoda and Hamel earned Kevin the Conspicuous Service Cross. Promoted to Brigadier in 1984, he later directed the Defence Force recruiting and Army personnel policy. In 1997-98, he led the creation of the Australian Memorial Parks at Hamel and Fromelles, working with the Australian Embassy in Paris. Since leaving the Army, Kevin has held significant public history and governance roles, including with the Sydney Harbour Federation Trust and the Kokoda Track Memorial Walkway. A recognised expert on the Western Front, he leads battlefield tours, lectures widely, and is the author of Defending Middle Head, A Short History and Long Tan Myths, Memories and Reality. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Kevin. Thank you.
I'll go straight into it. So there's the book. It's Ways of Killing Man. I've got 2 copies with me now, so if people are really busting to get one of me, I can organise you, but I won't be giving it to you. You've got to pay for it. Let's just see if I can make this work very quickly.
That's okay. It's upside down.
Ah, it is upside down. Okay. What got my goat was that everywhere I go, people say to me, "Oh, you're a Vietnam veteran. Oh, wasn't it great? 100 Australians beat 3,000 Vietnamese. Yup. I just started to think this can't be right." I was on the Defence Honours and Awards Appeals Tribunal, and I did the study into a recommendation for Warren Kirby, which Harry Smith put him up for a Victoria Cross. And when I looked at the information and looked at the logbooks, the sort of stuff that Bob Hall was talking about, and read all of the artillery missions, plotted them on the ground, I started to realise that a lot of this myth about 110 is a myth. It just didn't work. It just couldn't be right. And it transpired, of course, that in fact, even though the citation said that Warren Kirby had left the position and single-handedly captured an enemy heavy machine gun, there was no evidence. When I asked Harry Smith, I said, "Well, here's the guys, you put him up for Victoria Cross. Who saw this?" And so when we had the hearing under oath, it transpired. He came to me and he said, "Well, I know it happened, but I can't find anybody who saw it." So that was the start of the journey that's led me to the writing of this book. So ChatGPT, I went on and just had a look, and that's what it says. And so I held off, and it seems to focus on this 2-hour window with this sort of magic story that's happening. Well, the whole thing didn't take a couple of minutes. It's one of these longer battles that Bob Hall talked about. In fact, happily, Bob did the introduction to my book. So it goes, it does. The whole thing started basically when the task force arrived in Vietnam. Brigadier Jackson had already been there 9 months or so, and he travelled around the country, and he was kind of very aware of Dien Bien Phu. In fact, the CGS exercise the previous year, Penunga, had looked at Dien Bien Phu. And from all my reading of Jackson, I've had a look at his diaries and various stuff. His main object in life wasn't to save the Vietnamese province from the Vietnamese. He was thinking that he was going to build a base, and the base wouldn't get overrun. That was his main focus in life, was that base. And so the diggers, and I've talked to lots of them now, 5RR and 6RR, they spent their first month or two patrolling around locally, but also digging in, putting in barbed wire and protecting the base. That was their main aim in life. Outside the base were two villages, Longtan and Longfoot. And this particular one, Longfoot, I know this young bloke here, Graham Gordon, quite well, he decided that, those Vietnamese villages are too close to the base, they could mortar us from there. So he negotiated with the Vietnamese authorities, and we destroyed that town. We actually kicked them out, very short notice. And those villages, and we're talking a substantial town, a substantial village, cheap furniture, mahogany, tiled roofs, what have you. And I think everyone would realise, despite the fact that our Army PR newspaper articles and everything the press did, basically said, we destroyed that village to save them from the VC. Now, I don't know, you got to look at sort of some things that are happening recently in the Middle East to suggest this wasn't a great plan. Some of the people, and they've been met later on, they didn't get any compensation, they didn't even get anywhere to live. And they went to Wallong, found somewhere a bit of tin, and this was their new home. And we wondered why, veterans go back later and say, oh, but they loved us. Well, what really happened was they didn't love us at all, and they went through that provincial stuff we just talked about today about the local infrastructure, the Vietnamese communist infrastructure. They said, this is manna from heaven. How good is this? So within a very short time, we need to do something about it. Up from D45 Battalion in the local area, up through the line to the 5th Division, they requested support. People came down, they recce, they walked around, and they said, well, we have to do something about it. We've got to give these Australians a lesson. The lesson wasn't so much for the Australians, it was for the people in the province to see the lesson, that they weren't going to be deserted. You're not going to be kicked out of your house. These Australians, whoever they are, some of them still, there's examples of the 5 Battalion when they captured people, they thought we were the French that had come back. That's how little they knew in the province. So anyway, on the 17th of August, a major exercise is conducted. Down from the hills, bought a selection of weapons, and I've got selections of weapons there. And they must have understood our tactics and whatever. They must have known we had radars, because not only did they plan to fire in the middle of the night, all of them fired simultaneously. They had worked out their targets. They brought the guns, the mortars, the rockets and the ammunition down secretly, although as it happens, one of the patrols carrying a mortar was spotted by an A Company guy, and they were engaged. And one of the VC that was captured, who was actually a 275 regiment captured, he died. But the documentation showed that he was a mortar officer. But the report that comes in, you can see it's all in the logbook, we thought that the circular thing that they saw was a Claymore mine. It didn't say, oh, it could be an 82mm mortar. So an indicator was there, we didn't pick up on it. So what happens is, at midnight, at 2 a.m, we simultaneously fire. The border locating radars were unable to locate them. Jim Townley, a friend of ours, was in charge. We fired back and actually hit some, apparently. But they also hit us. And these are some of the firing positions there to the east of the base. So that little sausage thing there, like a Santa Claus Christmas stocking or something, like whatever I think it might be. It was the impact area that they did. And interestingly enough, and I'm not going to go sprinting over there, I killed myself, but the very far end of it there is where the gun batteries were. That's a part of the story. So we skip on. Now, there were 23 Australians wounded. Now, when we talk about Longtan, we never talk about these guys. 23 wounded. In fact, some of them ended up being quite seriously wounded. This young Philip Norris, he was in our show, first intake. It just shows you the sort of impact of war on conscription and stupid ideas like heading off to Vietnam at that particular time. We'll go through that in a minute. This poor little kid, he marries his 7-year-old girlfriend, just marooned to Vietnam. He couldn't get up to do the fire mission, just had a little fragment in his head. John Tasky, the RMO, said, oh, I better send him down to Buncow. He eventually comes back to Australia. He spent the rest of his life in a mental institution. He never, ever recovered. But he's not on the wall of remembrance because he didn't die of wounds. He died of the flu or something 20, 30 years later. You've got to die within 12 months to be on the wall of remembrance. So it just gives you an example of what happened. It's a really sad tale. You can Google him if you want to. I mean, he was married, of course. He got day leave. He was in and out of whatever for about 12 months. She got pregnant. Eventually, years later, she divorced him. She never told the kid he was the father. It's just a horrific tale. Okay, what happens then? Well, we talked about lure the tiger from the battle, lure the tiger from the cave. So this is what actually happens. Immediately the next morning, Bravo Company, so another company, Bravo Company is sent out to locate the water base plate positions, and that's off to the left of the screen you've seen there. I've just got one duck egg for where, symbolic. So they scout around and they actually do find most of the positions. But at this stage, their company was due to have R&R in Buncow. So 2 platoons of Bravo Company are called in from this major, the first time the base has ever been mortared, to go on R&R or R&C at Buncow. And they're told that they'll instead, will send, and they didn't take any equipment with them. They sent out with a carrier party with the food and they couldn't find them. Okay, so that's Bravo Company. So the next day, Delta Company reacted to go and take their place, and they go and they end up, the point where I've written there, see where there's a track coming in where I say security position, point 66. So when you read my book, point 66 is pretty important, you'll see that. D Company set off in single file, following the direction that that had been seen from the border base plate positions that had been fired from B Company. And as they get to that, what I call a security position, at the crossroads, they see 4 or 5 men. There's a very quick clash. We don't think the enemy fired back, but they dropped an AK-47. Why is that important? Oh, and then they bolted east. And why is that important? Well, until that time, D445 didn't have AK-47s. They only had what we would call educated M1s and odds and ends of ammunition. The AK-47 didn't get landed in the province at that time. There weren't any around. Secondly, if you just read the bare report that like Bob Hall talked about, it says sighted 5 enemy, fled east, dropped AK-47, dressed in khaki uniforms. D445 did not wear khaki uniforms, but they bolted. Now Gordon Sharp, who's a first intake, Doug Webster's classmate, Gordon Sharp, been in the army exactly 8 months at this stage. The whole platoon, there were only 2 or 3 regs in the platoon, they were nearly all Nashos. They'd never had a contact before. So Gordon Sharp gets on the blower and he says to his officer, the major who's experienced, been a miner and what have you, and he says, they fled east, you want me to follow up, sir? Well, I guess he would have said, sir, you want me to follow up? And it's quoted in the official history, the story is, he only says 3 words for you. He says, go for it. That is his orders to the platoon, is go for it. There's no, oh, this could be something serious. Wait till I bring another platoon up. Let's wait till I get the FO ready and the fire support ready to go. The limit of exploitation might be. All of those things he could have done, but he actually just said go for it. So Gordon, trained officer, they have to cross the road. They did the optional crossing of the road. And he says, looks through his men, he gives extended line, and off they go. And I talked to the section commander on the left, whose name is John Robbins. Robbo said, he was also a national serviceman, never done a corporal's course. I said to him, did you have a map, mate? And he said, no, I didn't have a map. I said, well, what orders did you get? He said, and I said, that was it. And he said, how far did you have to go? I didn't know. So I got mine there 8 metres apart. Now, if you look at a rubber plantation there, and I will speed over and do this very briefly. You can see at the point where they cross the road, he puts his right leg on the road, that the rubber plantation is about 800 metres wide. But what happens is, as you approach the slopes of the hill called Nuidat 2, it's only about 400 metres wide. So you've got 28 men, 10 metres apart, and the left-hand man, who we know him by name, as it happens, is, the further they advance, the more clearly he's within sight of the side of the slopes of Duckworth 2. Okay? So what happens? What happens is, I've got a little sausage there to show 11 platoon. A machine gun, could be more, we don't know, but certainly a machine gun, these are the factual figures. A machine gun opens fire in enfilade with the whole platoon, in single file in front of it, across their line, and that's actually the machine gun that's later captured. That's not the one that fired, but it's identical. 7.62 machine gun. For the section on the left, Robbo's section, he doesn't know how long they survived because he was shot through the elbow and hit the deck, snuggled up to a tree, kept his pack on. He couldn't fire back. He couldn't see anyone. He just hugged the tree as best he could. But what we know for a fact is that 5 of these men were killed within moments, right? But the story is that we stopped the enemy attacking our base. You remember that story? We were actually ambushed. There can be no question that this is an ambush. Robbins survives, and another fellow called Jimmy Richmond both survives. Or he didn't know Jim Richmond was left. He thought he was the only one left, and he had no idea where the rest of the two were. They were just further down the line, and the bullets are just raking through the tree. There's Jimmy Richmond the next day, about midday the next day. Jim Richmond is left there all night with 2 bullets through his chest. You can see they're going in from the left side. These photos are taken by one of the APC drivers, Paul McMichael, and like a good Nasho, but an APC driver, he took a camera. No one else had a camera. And he snapped these little shots, and I've become very good friends with him. He gave me these photos. He said he wishes he'd taken more now. But Jim Richmond, I also talked to the doctor, and the doctor said that the 2 bullets that hit him, I don't know if it was in and out or in and through. Anyway, the bullet went straight through him. So there's no doubt about it at all. Richmond, and I'll talk to him now, he rang me up about 2 weeks ago, I think I told Nico Ryan that last night. He didn't want to be interviewed. And I went to ring him, he said, oh, I imagine he said, some silly interview wants to talk to me, and I want to do that or whatever. He rang me 2 weeks ago and he said, is that Kevin Ryan? I said, yes. And he said, I just read your book, mate. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. So that's paid for the book 20 times over. Well, they're the 5 fellows that are killed. I'm not going to go through their story. I'm just trying to bring some ethos about, or empathy to this idea that we Mr. Menzies said on the 29th of April, we're going to stop those Chinese, get them through the dominoes, advancing through the Indian Ocean and all of that, which, it's just a fantasy. I think he even had Japan and China mixed up. I mean, China didn't even have a navy at the time. There's no way that we were going to stop a thrust upon Australia. I mean, it's just really good. But these kids here, they're all dead. The youngest of them on the left, Frank Klopp, went to school with, what was your name?
Bob Whittaker.
He went to Helen School. Now, it just shows you an example of what's happening here. He was a reg, and therefore very young. He only joined the company the day before, and John Robbins had never even met him. When they stopped for the broom to swoop through the rubber, John Robbins thought, oh, I better go and meet this new young fellow. He went over and had a brew together, and that's the last time he ever talked to him. He was dead 7 minutes later. After they came back, and I just want to talk about mateship a bit here, because this is the good side of longhand, but not the side that's in the books. Robbo comes back to Australia eventually. We'll go to that in a second. But he makes contact with Frank's family in Helen, and they knew nothing, of course, because the battalion was still in Vietnam. And every year, that family came and saw him on the way to the Eka, because they were country kids. anyway, it just sort of. So there we go. What happens next is we think there's a whole battalion sighted to their east, because what we do know is that the next day, and this is when Bob was talking about preparation, on this track here, between here and here, there are 200 weapon pits dug, 3-foot weapon pits dug in preparation, right? So there's no question. Now, we know from Ernie Chamberlain's work that young Brett, was it Brett? Is he still here? Yeah. Talked about Ernie Chamberlain's information, because we later captured, a couple of years later, we captured the diaries of the battalion, 275 Regiment. We know the roll book, we've got the roll books. That battalion had about 250 in it. So there's 250 members of 275 Regiment there. We think what happens, and it sort of makes sense, doesn't it? You've got a machine gun on the hill that's providing fire support from a flank. He crosses, he gets the ball, he must think to himself, I'm in a good shot to clean these blokes up. When the opening artillery fire occurs, it's fired up onto the hill, up where the machine gun is. That's where we're firing. So the battalion commander, the 275 battalion commander, clearly decides we'll cross the road and we'll assault them. Presumably 2 companies up, one in depth, one in the reserve. It's not some sort of mass human wave attack thing that we make up. It's a proper attack. They're also supported by mortars, because we know that, because 2 of the guys at the back of 11th platoon are, one's killed and one's wounded by mortar fire, right? So they are being mortared, so they're getting indirect fire support, fire from the flank, and they assault. Unfortunately, and this is where the whole thing changes, that is the ammunition on the top there on the right that was delivered just 2 or 3 days before by helicopter, because one of the staff officers on the headquarters said, we've only got 100 rounds per gun in Vietnam. 100 rounds isn't very many. When I was in Korea, he was an infantry officer as it turns out, though, when I was in Korea, we could fire 100 rounds a night. So he talks to the brigade commander, he said, yeah, do it. So we had 300 rounds of ammunition delivered just days before Long. That's it being stored. And on the right, you just see the produce, the shells and the charge bags from one of the sections of artillery that were firing, because there were actually 3 field regiments and an American 155 battery. There were 24 guns, all within range. So what happens is, and I'll put a little duck egg there in orange, I've done that by plotting the grid references of each of the missions, 5 round 5 effect, right 200, 5 round 5 effect, drop 200, whatever. That entire area, right back to where the dug-in position was, so that for a period of about 25 minutes, is saturated by the best part of 1,000 rounds of ammunition. John Heselwood, who's one of the riflemen in 11th platoon that survives, not many, there's 13 of them killed. One of them who survives, he said, and I've quoted him in the book, he said, the rate of fire was so high, he said, I didn't have to fire much because nobody got through it. He said, lucky I didn't, because we only carried 60 rounds per man. We've decided that we would halve the battalion first line SAP to travel light. We only had 1 magazine on the weapon and 2 in their basic pouch. So had that fire not come, they would have been absolutely wiped out. That platoon, what was left of them, would have been wiped out within minutes. As it happens, none of the 275 regiment got through. And that battalion, we now know, it is the 3rd Battalion of 275 Regiment. They had been in a big dust-up with the Americans a few weeks before and had taken a whole bunch of reinforcements who were North Vietnamese conscripts, right? So that's where the origin of, they're all NVA. This 275 Regiment is a Southern regiment, it's a main force regiment. They're not NVA. That particular battalion had about half North Vietnamese conscripts in the battalion. They are decimated, those guys, and they're the ones that the next day, you later find out. So I'm going to skip through very quickly. Sharpie, he controls the battle. There's no question about that. He's the man who controls. They attempted to move his section from the right before that attack came in. He tried to do that ambush drill that we talked about this morning, let's, you know, and this is the very first contact, and he thought, I'll get the section sweep around. Well, as they stood up to sweep around, the blokes from the Rikers knocked them over, and they went to ground. So the survivors, what I have discovered is if you were on the ground, you never got hit. If you're on because an AK-47 to a degree with a big magazine, you're also lying on the ground, firing high, and the photographs show that's the case. Now, I'll skip through very quickly now. Just on dark, they don't know that an airstrike was attempted. It never happened because it was raining, monsoon. What they do know is that when the airstrike was planned, they had to cut the artillery fire. So there was no artillery fire at all for 23 minutes. 23 minutes, there's no fire at all. Okay? Then the two platoons that try to get to them, both 10 and 12, they take different routes. And in each case, well, in the first case, the 10 platoon, they're fired on by that same machine gun on the hill. So the artillery fire, the entire regiment is shifted up onto the hill and taken away from 11 platoon, the very people who need it. Right? Then finally, 12 platoon, leaving one section behind to guard company headquarters, that's Dave's 7th platoon, who's also a classmate of Dave's. They progress, I just want to go back to here. 10 platoon, very briefly, 10 platoon comes straight across the top. They're hit by the same machine gun. There's actually only one guy, only the signaller is shot to the shoulder, no one else hit, but eventually they turn and go back. 12 platoon, they cut down the bottom, which is sensible, and whether they're fired on by them or what happens, or they're getting overs from all the people who don't get killed, are still here. They're still sniped. It's like a deadly duel going on between what's left here, but we haven't got any ammunition, hardly. And these guys here don't much. Anyway, 12 platoon also stop and never get to them. Nobody gets to them. Nobody in 11 platoon is rescued by anybody, right? There is no support. There's no helicopters bring ammunition. They bring it to company headquarters. Nobody gets to 11 platoon. It's an 11 platoon battle. Okay. Right on dark, or getting on the dark, at the time of the helicopter resupply, Sergeant Buick is now taking command. There have been no more attacks from the time he took command. There was no attacks on him at all. He, well, what does he do? He's an experienced and just been promoted to sergeant. He's got no, he cannot move. Anybody who moves, Sharpie is killed when he tries to shift the artillery fire around to the right. He knelt up and he shot through the throat. And the batsman shot through the mouth. That you just cannot survive. So, a key play is what I've said here. Buick calls out every man for himself. Now, this is very controversial at one stage. I'm not moving into the defamation territory. But anyway, five of the six survivors told me that's what he said, so that's what I've written in the book. Okay, I think it's probably not unreasonable. What else could he have done? What else? You can stay there all night, they've got no ammunition left. He doesn't know, they've lost comms. Anyway, what happens is, the signaller, Vic Rice, who's next to Sharp, the moment Buick yells every man for himself, that obviously attracts some attention. He jumps up and runs, so do some others. Vic Rice is obviously a bit slower to get up. He's killed. As soon as he stands up, he's down. Bloody next day, the radio's still working. Radio still working when they got back the next day. So we left everything behind. This is the Batman, the only other guy in company headquarters, out in return headquarters, Barry Miller. He's shot through the mouth, which, as you can see. When he gets the every man for himself, he jumps up, runs 5 paces, is shot on the backside, hits the deck, and he's had it. One of the guys from the front line, of which there's only 5 of them, or 6 of them, I think, with a tree each able to fire on the front, a guy called Barry Magnuson, he actually stops and grabs him, tries to help him, and eventually he gets him back about 50, 60 metres, and Melville says, look mate, get out of here, because people are still firing, and leave me, and he does, he leaves him behind, and he runs. Now, his nickname's Custard, I don't know why, but Custard Mello, maybe it was Custard's last name, I don't know. Custard Mello also stays there all night, nobody gets to him, he stays there, and apparently allegedly says the next day when they come back to pick them up, what kept you? Anyway, that's him. Now, Ernie Grant is my hero of this thing. Ernie's from Albury. John Robbins, the second commander guy, he ran back towards company headquarters. Remember, he shot through the elbow? He runs back into company headquarters direction and starts to take off when he's hit again. He's hit this time in the other hand, and he said the bullet went straight through his hand. He said it didn't really hurt, but a sort of shock that it knocked him over, right? So he falls down. Ernie Grant is one of those 6 guys. He could have run away, but he didn't. He stopped. And the thing with Robbo said he kept the pack on. He thought that would be protection, and he couldn't stand up. And so Ernie went over him to try and get his pack off, and he's killed. Just drops absolutely dead. Now I said to Robbo, gee, I'm surprised that all those people got medals at Montana. How come Ernie never got a medal? And he said, well, no one ever asked me. He said, well, when I eventually went through Van Tau to the emergency, evacuation hospital, 35 evac, came back to Australia, planted rocks, which would have been the part of his hand. But anyway, he gets discharged. He said, I never had any after-action report. No one ever questioned me. No one, saw me in hospital, other than the PR major who brought through all these Vietnamese girls to give us flowers and dolls in the hospital. And I'm thinking, when I heard the story about VC infrastructure, I thought, well, I bet when they went back, they told everybody the hospital's full of Australian wounded. There were 30 odd people in the hospital, and they would have known from the newspapers that there were 18 killed. So suddenly, if there's any truth about a Vietnamese victory, there's evidence of it, isn't there? Okay, well, there we go. Old Robbo says, I've just quoted the book. He basically says he believes that our Ernie did a good job. So we'll jump on. At the same time, there is an attempt coming out of the base to rescue them. 8 companies put in APCs. They have to ford the river. This is John Foreman Michael. That's his track. As they burst through 2 lots of would have been D445 who were sent around the back to cut off any ambush. His troop commander is actually killed. He just slides down inside. The tracks were so old, he didn't even know his troop commander had been, until somebody inside ran through him and said, stop. Anyway, that's him. I won't tell you more about him now. In the end, the whole company ends up at dark, except for the bottom right-hand corner, the missing. There's 2 kids left behind. The rest of them come up there. B Company, I haven't mentioned B Company, but they hadn't got back. The 40-odd men from B Company hadn't got back to base when the contact occurred. So the B Company commander got on the blower and he said, you want me to go back? You want help? Whatever. And he just told to sit there. So they sat there, B Company, 2 kilometres away. They could have been doing, I don't know what. They could have gone to a bank. They could have gone anywhere. They didn't get back till dark. A Company come up the track. Oh, I've shown where the rubber is. A Company come up in the APCs. Unfortunately, as they're approaching, they see B Company, and one of the guys on the top shoots one of the A Company guys. Who doesn't die on that report. But anyway, in the end, they arrive. Now, allegedly, and this is the most controversial part of the book, right on dark, if you just plot the radio transmissions, which I plotted, every single one, at one stage at 1830, it says, all clear, nobody here. 1835, the FO says, I think we're being attacked from the north. Then it's being attacked from the east. And then finally he calls in a fire mission, and the entire regiment from Australia and America blows this area here to pieces down here. Now 12 platoon who picked up the leftovers from 11, they'd come back that way. In the mix-up and the joining, a cock-up occurs, and there's fire coming through their position, but not the intensity of where 11 platoon were. And unknown to anyone, the platoon sergeant is hit in the foot somehow or other, and he's left behind. He crawls back and on dark, and as he's coming in, the VC, or I say VC, the regular 275 guys, who must have been following him, one Australian killed and 1 wounded, rescuing him and bringing him into the perimeter. So, yeah, it's just the truth of life. The heavy machine gun, I'm convinced that that heavy machine gun, it could have been moved from spot to spot, but it now swings around and engages company headquarters. We know that for a fact because the bullets are whipping through the trees, and one of the guys at the back of the company is shot in the back. So there's no question that that's what happened. But what's happened then is the fellows on the perimeter, it's nearly dark, they see someone, they fire, who knows? I mean, I was in a contact myself at one of the platoons where we fired 600 rounds at a porcupine. So I mean, it can happen. The fact is that the story goes that this is where, if you read most of the books that are written about Long-Tan, right on dusk, somehow or other, there is a mass attack on company headquarters, thousands, and they're jumping over each other's bodies and so on and so forth. I just can't see how it ever happened. It's impossible that it could have happened. How could they have, the 275 regiment have organised to come, you know, they don't even know where they are until these blokes go back, right on dark, and somehow or other they could organise a battalion attack in 5 minutes or something like that. And all of the Vietnamese intelligence about their tactics is break off after 2 hours, whatever. So I'm convinced that people just imagined it, and that's to a degree controversial. Okay, so there we go. Some of the guys, we end up with this photo, and there's poor old Gordon Sharp himself. This is the next day, 10 o'clock. And that's a big Bryce there, the radio operator, and the black bit, that's the radio, that's his 25 set year. And that's in line here. And, you know, Sharpie here, I mean, it's pretty horrible. He's still got his hand on the bloody trigger. Christ's sake. I mean, it's a pretty horrible thing. But look at the bullet holes in the trees, how high they are. Right? And there's that row of trees that we're talking about. The platoon, the section that wiped out would have been one, that's platoon headquarters, would have been a row of trees further along and to the left behind those bushes. But see, there's not many branches knocked off the trees, is there? So the fire must have been incredibly accurate over the hills and what have you. I put that there, that's in Berea, I don't know who's seen it, that's the Vietnamese monument in Berea, got the names up there. The controversy is also, you know, like it's a who won thing, you know, just is the body count one? We thought we'd lost, right? At that night, Harry thought his career was in ruins. The CO Townsend, Colin Townsend, who became our CO when we were cadets, we pulled out of the rubber. We pulled out of the rubber to get them out. And unreasonable. Why would Townsend take a risk? He's already had a big battle. He's got, at this stage of the game, 15 or so missing, which turns out to be 13 killed, 2 wounded. Is he going to go prowling around in the dark? He doesn't know what's out there. He makes a decision to pull out. Now, from the Vietnamese perspective, they had planned this for some time. We know that because of the way the indirect fire support occurred. They'd also planned the propaganda, the story in the town and the villages. They knew this was all happening. They were able to, and remember that all the people killed are not local province people, the ones that we end up killing. We don't know they're dead till the next day. It's not till we arrive back, and the whole battalion goes back the next day, that they find just forward of 11 platoon all these bodies. Now, the controversy there, did we have a proper mass grave? Did we collect through intelligence? Did we front it like a crime scene? Did we collect the details of the people? There was talk about bringing a dozer out. In the end, those poor bloody nashos that were there, the poor, nearly all nashos, poor souls that were there, were just told to do their best. And most of them didn't even have trenching tools. So they borrowed some sharp spades and things off the APCs. These people didn't get a proper burial. There was no. We could have got the local Buddhist guy out. We could have had a propaganda event, not a propaganda event. We could have treated people with dignity, like we talked about Fromell in the First World War. But we didn't. Why didn't we do that? I don't know why we didn't do that. And then the numbers being reported. By midday, we found 80 and 50 weapons. By the next day, we found officially 248 and the same 50 weapons. So we postulated that. Bob and I have talked about it. I mean, it is easier to take weapons away than it is to take bodies away. There's crazy stories of people being brought in to take off bodies and things. And then later on we've had stories that supposedly a Chinese guy told that we killed thousands of people. Well, we couldn't have killed thousands because there's only 245 in the battalion that was there. Right? So I don't know. One of the biggest, Terry Burstall, who went back, he told me two things. Terry said he was there all day burying women. He said there was 50 of these supplies. Now, it's clearly more than 50. Ernie Chamberlain says in the logbooks it's in the 100 and something, but it's probably not 250. And nor should we say 100 Australians killed 3,000 Vietnamese because it's not true. It's just not true. And it's disrespectful as well of our enemy, who, these poor buggers, like the charge of the neck for them, that they were attacking us, being incredibly brave. The pictures are quite horrific. Terry told me a second thing. When he went back in '89, 20 years later, he went to Long Tan and he met with lots of people, eventually went 3 or 4 times. He eventually feels one Vietnamese fellow stopped him in the corner a little bit. He went over to him and said, and spoke to him, and the guy looked at him and he poked him in the chest and he said, "How can you say you won? You ran away." And we did. 11 to 2 did run away, and the battalion ran away. But so did they. So there's no question, they left all those people behind with all their weapons, all their heavy weapons. I must have gone over time by now. So thank you very much. Now, I brought 2 books with me only. I can't give them away, but if you think that you can't get one online, I sold 57 in the last 2 weeks online. They're going like hotcakes. I went to Desert RSL, you couldn't believe it. Last Tuesday night, 27 people bought it. Unbelievable. So they're going like hotcakes. You're very well protected. I've only told you what's the battle. I've also told you about why we went to Vietnam. The biggest war in Vietnam, the biggest win at Long Tan, of course, was in Australia when the Prime Minister found out that he'd lost as many people in one day as the whole of 1RA had lost in the previous year. They were in panic stations in Canberra. We even got the President of the United States to say, "You Aussies, the fight a punch above the weight." Thank you very much.
We are in our lunchtime, but I think given the presentation we just had and this whole issue about the fog of war, I will open it up for a couple of quick questions, please, maybe 1 or 2. Yeah, thank you.
Was it the New Zealand battery that answered the call Danger Close?
They made a movie called Danger Close. It's a movie, not a documentary. So, was it Danger Close yet? The original 161 battery were the direct support battery, right? It was an Australian company, New Zealand FO 161. The opening fire up on the hill was not Danger Close. That was like normal 1,000 metres away range. Okay, they fired 1, maybe 2 repeats when the whole regiment, most of the gunners were at the bloody concert, and running back, and the whole regiment then fired on the hill. So later on, there was arguments about did they use danger close procedures, which is using 1 lot of ammunition, which they're able to do because we've just got this whole big batch of ammunition.
How was it that the RAAF did not respond and call for support that the Navy did?
No, there was no Navy support, Air Force. The Air Force support. Harry, the task force had never had an airstrike at this stage of the war. There'd never been an airstrike until then. So Harry thought, "Gee, the airstrike sounds good." Task force said to us, "Oh, let's do that." So they requested an airstrike. Of course, when we got casualties like they were, it was agreed that an airstrike would be put in. So the fact came on site, and I put in a couple of airstrikes as well. They came on, but it was the monsoon rain started about half an hour later. They couldn't see the target. The guy stood around and he said, "We can't do this." So that we'd actually lost 27 minutes of artillery fire. And the helicopters later on, when they delivered the ammunition, there was a big controversy there. The gist of it is though, they did deliver the ammunition, but they delivered it to company headquarters, so there was no way to give it to
I guess something that's beyond controversy is the fact that there's an Australian memorial at Long Tan, and the Vietnamese authorities are quite happy to
Yep.
The only time that
You've been there, haven't you?
Well, 3 times. But the only time there was friction was in 2016, when the whole commemoration was over-egged by the media, and the Vietnamese got a little bit twitchy about that. But that memorial is still there, it's maintained.
Okay. Shall I tell you about that now? So I've written an article about this, but not in the book, but I'm going to release it shortly. The original cross was done by the battalion, 6RAR, 3 years later. That cross eventually is taken down, eventually found when Terry Burstall goes back, and the Vietnamese, over 20 years of negotiation, decided it was a relic, a military relic, and it's back in Australia at the moment. The one that's there now is a replica cross, and it was actually built by some of the D445 soldiers, right, in respect to both sides, and they put it up apparently in the original spot. I'm not too sure from the Bible that it's in the right spot, but anyway, they put it up there now. Now, it's on private land, built by these. They don't have memorials for foreign nations, especially no American, I'm telling you now. There is one at Dien Bien Phu, which the French eventually got permission to do in 1990 something, right? But the one there, so we can only go there if we respect Vietnamese things. The problem with the 50th anniversary that you're talking about, which is why I'm doing this for the 60th, we got a bit carried away here. We had tour groups, we thought it was like going to Poitiers or something, you know. We had all these people, and they're all celebrating triumphantly. Ah, we killed those Vietnamese, we showed them. We bloody well didn't. We lost the war.
Yeah, the other thing is in a banana plantation.
Yeah, well, it was rubber then it became bananas. Right now, it's nothing. It's all bulldozed around. It's been ploughed.
Kevin?
Sorry, mate. I can talk forever. Thank you. It's not a matter of selling you, but I don't really want the money. I just want you to read it.